Hello, hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Megan HD, aka Megan Talks, and today we're talking books. So, in the months of June, July, I have been reading, and one thing that I started in June kind of on accident was reading three different sci-fi series. I read the first book to each of those in sequence with each other, just the way that my Libby holds turned out. If you know, you know. So I thought to myself, this might be a really fun opportunity to to kind of compare and contrast these three series. And really, what I'm essentially going to give you is one long review and one long suggestion on where you should read sci fi, like which of these books you should read. Because I do feel like these books really show three different subgenres of sci fi that I like in particular, some more than others, as we'll see. So, I do want to say up top that the first half of this video is going to be completely spoiler free. So, I will not say anything that's not just on like the back blurb of the book in this first half. I will then tell you very specifically when I start the spoiler section. I'm still going to try to stick to light spoilers, no like major plot points specifically, but more of the vibes, more of what I really think about them. So, up top's just going to be kind of like a quick run through of these. I'm going to give you some suggestions of other series to read if you like this series or vice versa. And then we're going to move into more of my like real meaty thoughts about what happens in each of these books. So I'm going to start at the beginning by giving you my least favorite up to my most favorite, and then I'll circle back around to each one of those more in depth. So we're going to start with Hyperion by Dan Simmons. This got a 2.5 stars from me, which might make you think, like, why would you recommend it? I will say it's good sci-fi, and the second book I'm enjoying more, but this book in particular, 2.5. I'm going to go ahead and stick up here some book series where I think if you liked this book series, you might like this one. If you like this one, you might like these other series. I can only recommend or like give examples of series that I myself have read. So just know that going in, that these are just only the comparables that I have in my life. But okay, as you can see on there's some heavy hitters like Lord of the Rings and Dune, which are both comparable to this book in that the epic expanse of the world. So these are huge worlds that we're walking into. And that's one of the things that I actually really enjoyed about this book was just like you can tell that he has an idea of, again, a bigger universe, which I do enjoy. Also, the concept in general, I'll explain a little bit, is really interesting. So essentially, we are following 7 people who have been selected by this like government organization, the Hegemony, to visit a planet and deal with an enemy called the Shrike. And that's really all I'm going to tell you. That's kind of what the back blurb tells you. These people are on a pilgrimage from to get to this planet. They're all there for a reason. We find out what the reason is in this book for each of them. So very intriguing, very interesting premise. Again, in the second half where I give a little bit more spoilers, I'll talk about what I didn't like about this. But in general, if you're into like a big wide world in space, lots of in-world references that then you don't quite know, but then you learn later, that might be a book for you. That might be a series for you. Hyperion is the first in 4 books called in total the Hyperion Cantos. And the first one, Hyperion, was published in 1989. So it's a little bit of an older book. The last one I believe was published in like the 2010s though. So a wide series ranging a long amount of time. Okay, the next book that I've got for you is The Three-Body Problem by Xin Liu. And this book, I had actually already seen the Netflix series, and I will say, I think that it's one of the best adaptations of a book to TV show that I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm gonna give the TV show a huge rave. And I do want to say that up front, that I do think that might have influenced my opinion of this book, because to me it was just getting more background to a TV show that I already knew and loved. So with that, I gave that book a 4 out of 5 stars. This book is the hardest one not to spoil by just saying what the plot points are, if that makes sense. Again, I bet a lot of you have probably seen Three Body Problem. If not, definitely go watch that, like, ASAP. But this book deals with the question of extraterrestrial life and what should we do as people of Earth if we encounter extraterrestrial life. That's like a really vague explanation of this book, but I'm going to go ahead and throw up here some other books that I think that you might like, or again, if you like these books, you might like Three Body Problem. Project Hail Mary that you see on this list right here was another one of my favorite books that I've read this year. I consider 4-star, 5-star books like my best reads of the year. Most of my books get 3 stars and below, honestly. So these were two of my favorite books, Project Hail Mary and Three Body Problem, that I've read this year. To me, Three Body Problem is such quintessential sci-fi. It deals with humans as they are, like, today, or, you know, really maybe 40, 50 years ago. And it brings us through, like, what humanity, the humanity of today, is doing. That's another reason why I think it compares very well to, like, the Enders series, because that is, again, like, us humans here and then us humans in the near future. So find that very, very interesting. And if you're into that kind of stuff, then you might be into Three Body Problem. Okay, the last one is the 5th season, which I'm going to have to represent with my Kindle because I do not have that book physically. These are actually my brother's books, so I don't have any of them physically. I read them all on my Kindle. But the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, I gave 3 stars. But the entire series, I give like a 4.5 stars. The last book is my second 5-star book of the year. This was the only series that I felt like I had to immediately read the second and third books in the series after reading 5th season. And I will say, honestly, I'll get a little bit more into this in the spoiler section. The 5th season was my least favorite of the trilogy. Like, it got 3 stars. The second one got 4 stars. The last one got 5 stars. So it is one that I personally believe you should commit to the entire trilogy from the beginning, because I just struggled a little bit with the first one in particular. Again, I'll talk about that more. In the very beginning, you get essentially a world that is facing a disaster like it's never faced before. And then this first book is about meeting the people who are going to attempt to deal with that disaster. And if you like a character study book, a book that has a big wide world, but also dives so deeply and intimately into who its characters are and why they're making the decisions that they're making, this is the book for you. This book series, 5th season, is going to be the one that I am going to recommend every single person. If you have any interest in sci-fi and you're watching this and you haven't read the 5th season, go read the 5th season. And I'm going to go ahead and put on the screen some things that if you liked these, you would probably like 5th season. If you like 5th season and you haven't read these, do the thing. You're going to see on here the Giver series. A lot of people didn't know that that is part of like, the Giver, the book, is a part of a 4-book series. In particular, the very last one, which is called Sun, is the one that I would in particular recommend if you liked this book. Also, if you want me to dive deeper into any of these, let me know in a comment and I would be happy to for any of the books in this entire video. Just let me know. Also, you're going to see on here Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I do feel like the world building of Brandon Sanderson in general and the world building of the 5th season are comparable in a lot of ways. Warbreaker is kind of a one-off novel of Brandon Sanderson's. It's still part of the Cosmere, but it's not, you don't have to read 12 other books to be able to get to that one. So I highly recommend that book. The Will of the Many is another, like, really trendy sci-fi book that's happening right now. And I read that one also this year, and it is very similar vibes in terms of intrigue, in terms of making you want to continue reading, making you want to flip the page. Both of those books have that in common, which I really, really like. So now, warning, 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 spoilers ahead. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about mostly really the things that I didn't like that much about these books, maybe push you one way or the other, because if you've heard what I've just said, it's kind of a rave on all of them. And I do really want people to read more sci-fi, but let's get down into a little bit more of the nitty gritty, what I would recommend specifically and what I would stay away from if you don't like certain things. I'm going to go in reverse order. So I'm going to start with the 5th season so I can just continue mostly my rave about it, but also get a little bit more into why the first book was my least favorite. So in the 5th season, there is like twists at the end. There are things, intriguing things that you're kind of supposed to wonder about the entire book. And then there's like, I can think of two in particular, sort of big twists at the end of the book. I personally felt like those big twists were very, very easy to see coming. I don't know if that's because I've read a lot of sci-fi and I've read a lot of books in general and I really have like an eye out for tropes. It doesn't mean that I didn't like what the twists were or didn't think that they were good. I just felt like the payoff was not as much as I wanted it to be, and I could just feel the potential there. And that's why I like had to read the next ones, because I will say the payoff in the second one and the third one and the payoff for the whole series in general is so good. And I know now that when I go back to reread them, because I will be rereading these books at some point in my life, I know that when I do that, that this first story will have so much more depth now that I've read the whole series. It's one of those. So again, that's why I recommend it overall. But if you struggled with the first book in the series, like I struggled with it a little bit because it was really heavy sci-fi, all kind of dumped onto you. And then again, the payoff in the end didn't feel 100% worth it. So I was kind of like, okay, 60% of this book, I was just confused about what was happening and trying to like get myself into the world. And then the last 40%, I definitely was more on board. But then again, I kind of saw the ending coming. Totally fine. I could not have seen where the whole story went in general. You kind of, again, tropes are not bad if they are done well, if that makes sense. So this is definitely a book about a hero and a hero's journey. And in particular, this book, like I said, is such a character study. And it is in particular a character study of a woman who is a mother and struggles with her identity of being herself and being a mother and just what that means. And it's just so like I feel like I'm not even explaining it right, because it's just again interwoven with this like fantasy world, with these questions of like otherness and class and social structure, and then also this wider hero's journey story trying to solve a problem. You have interwoven in that just a beautiful story of a woman trying to figure out what she can give who, and at what time in her life, and if it's all worth it, and just big huge questions. And I loved it. Again, total rave. If this video is mostly just a rave for the Broken Earth trilogy, that's okay with me. Let's move on to the 3-body problem. We'll go backwards. So again, I said that one of the things that I think might be the case is that the TV show has influenced my feelings, because it is a little bit of a boring story. I can imagine that it could be boring to read for some people, especially in the middle, like 40 to 60%, where nothing feels like nothing is happening. I really liked watching the show first and then going back and getting to have details added in for me that come from this book. Like I said, this book is sort of quintessential sci-fi for me. The 5th season to me is more fantasy sci-fi, where we are bringing in like magic and a magic system, and even though it is humans and is humanity kind of as we have it today, it's like way far in the future, or like enough has changed that it's a completely different world than the one that we live on right now. Hyperion is like Dune in that it is essentially set so far in the future that humanity has abandoned the original Earth, and we're on all of these different planets. It also kind of has like that old school vibe a little bit, in just like, even though technology is so heightened, it almost feels like a cowboy book. I don't know how else to describe it, but that's how it is. That's how I feel about it. The 3-body problem is just like straight up classic sci-fi. So when I compared it to Orson Scott Card, I feel like that is also classic sci-fi, which does have the problem of sometimes being a little bit boring. Like when I think of classic sci-fi, thinking about like Isaac Asimov, Foundation, I could never get through those because they're just like excruciating detail. And this book can definitely fall into that. The second book in the series, I can't remember what it's called right now, but I've tried to start it and I got about 50 pages in and I was like, I have to put this down because these 50 pages have taken me like 3 days to get through. I had no desire. I was trying to like slog myself along already in the first 50 pages. I'm not doing that right now in my life. So maybe one day I'll come back to it, but I'm not like super concerned. This one almost feels like it works as a one-off book, which I also think that again is influenced by the fact the TV show just does it so well, and I really liked how it wrapped up the story. And I don't personally feel like I need to get too much more into the story past that. So again, I recommend it, especially if you're in that zone of really liking classic sci-fi. But if you're not, and don't want to slog through a story that's a little bit sometimes more minutia than it is like character development or character building, that might not be the one for you. Last one, Hyperion. And again, I'm now on the second book of Hyperion and I'm actually really liking it. I don't think it makes me want to change entirely my thoughts about the first one, but as much as Three Body Problem is a book that can exist, it's the first book can exist and you don't necessarily have to read anymore and it can still feel satisfying. Hyperion is the exact opposite because the story is essentially short stories within this wider story, like I said. But then nothing happens in the wider story. Like all of our characters are coming together and then they're getting to Hyperion, the planet Hyperion, to face the Shrike. This is all stuff that you can read on the back blurb. And we don't get any more past them landing on the planet, essentially. So each of the characters on the ship is giving their background to like why they think they were chosen to come on this like Hail Mary mission to try to tame the Shrike or whatever. Each of their stories are very interesting, but I found myself enjoying about half of them and not enjoying about half of them. And so when that's the entire book, it made about half of the book unenjoyable to me. And I can imagine that everybody would have different stories of the ones that are told. I can imagine that everybody would have different ones that they enjoyed more than other ones. Even people that like to read the same things as me. Like there's different characters that you could connect to, different storylines that you could find more pertinent to the situation, different background characters, that sort of thing. Again, I liked about half of them, and about half of them I had to like force myself to get through. So that was just a little frustrating to me. I do think that came from not being prepared for what I was walking into. So I do think like the frustration part of that, I do think that if I had known that that's what it was going to be, I would have enjoyed the situation a lot more, and maybe I would have read another book in between so that I could just like come back and read the short stories and not feel like I was being duped out of like an actual full story, if that makes sense. Again, I'm liking the second one a lot better. It follows a little bit more of a classic storytelling technique of like things happening, action happening in a line. Hopefully there's some rising action happening. I think where I'm about to get to a more climactic part of that book. The one thing that I have to say that really makes me not want to recommend Hyperion, it's the only one that if you've gotten to this far in the video, again, my hope is that people read more sci-fi, but this book is so obviously written from a male perspective. And when I put up those other classic ones, Lord of the Rings, Dune, Earthsea, all three of those, if you haven't read any of those, but this book sounds intriguing to you, go start there first, especially with Earthsea, because it's so, like, if you don't read a lot of sci-fi, but you want something mystical, magical, and you want it to be, like, easy to get through, and a good story, and with payoff and all of that, go read Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin. Such a good set of stories, written for a little bit of a younger audience, think like maybe Harry Potter level, but so good. And you can listen to them too, and the narrator is decent. These books, so the Hyperion Cantos are written by a man, and again, they were published for the first time in 1989, and it feels very obvious, both of those things. Like, none of the characters so few of the characters are women in this series, and the ones that are fit so heavily into like bad tropes that it just, that part gets under my skin a little bit and makes it like, I don't know if I want to recommend this to everybody, you know? Like I read a lot of stuff from the male perspective, and I think there's a lot just more nuanced and better with better female characters than this book in particular. So that's like the last thing that I really have to say in terms of negative about Hyperion. I don't know what the second book is going to get for me in terms of star rating, but again, this one was a 2.5, my lowest rated one, not only for like the sexism stuff, but also because I just didn't enjoy a lot of the process. So, fair enough, right? Sylviana being a nuisance. Well, that's that on that short story long about all of these books. I hope that this has motivated you in some little tiny way to consider reading sci-fi. I love sci-fi, or watching The Three Body Problem on Netflix. If that's also what comes out of this for you, that's totally fine by me. Okay, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye. Okay, wait, really quick. I do just want to shout out a few things that I've been doing around the internet that I think you guys might be interested in. Again, if you make it all the way to the end of this video. One is that I have now launched a podcast with my sibling. It is called Divine Delectable Delirious, a Gilmore Girls analysis podcast. You can find that on Spotify. And you can also find us on Instagram under the name Triple D Pod. You can also find us on Patreon, Triple D Pod, TRIPLED POD. Check us out. Find me if you want to hear more of the ramblings. All right. Bye.